always thought I needed to get myself a Big Country Robinson jersey.
Yes.
And to me, that would be believable. But nobody's going to believe Matt walking around the Big Dick Robinson. Like, that's not going to fly. Nobody's buying that, right? So...
This is Tall Can Audio.
Off and running on an all-new episode of the Tall Can Audio podcast for your Canada Day long weekend. And I would love to tell you that myself and my good buddy here, my co-host tonight, Maddie Lang, are just that committed to you guys that we were willing to cancel our Friday night plans and come in and do a podcast for you on this Raptors news. But both just actually kind of old, kind of just sitting around anyway as the news broke. So fuck it. Let's grab a beer and talk about something. Maddie Lang, what's happening, buddy?
Way to sell us out to the good listener there.
They know, man.
they know.
See, I suspected. I did text you and like, there's no way this guy's just sitting around like I am. And sure enough, there he was, just sitting on the fucking couch.
I am using the reason that we knew all the NBA news is breaking today.
Yeah.
So I am the good, co-host.
Yeah, you've penciled this in.
Going to do my due diligence, and I was on Twitter. I was messaging Woj and Shams and trying to see what was going on in the league as it's happening. And, because I'm a committed guy, that's it. But I want to be fresh for tomorrow's NHL news that I'm sure we're going to get coming out over. Or I guess they moved the NHL, right? It's no longer July 1st, right?
It is July 1st again. It had been backed up. Remember, with COVID, the season kept running longer, so they did it one year on like the 20th, then last year it was on like the 10th, and now they're back to the 1st. So
okay, well,
we'll see who Michael Bunting signs with next on Saturday or whatever. But man, much bigger news in the NBA, especially as it pertains to the Raptors. We'll get to that in a second. This came to very kind of just out of the blue for you and I. We're both sitting around. The news dropped, decided we'll do a show. So I don't know if you had anything kicking around, a pint you brought to the table, or maybe something a little mixed. It's a little late at night. What's happening on your end for sipping on?
Today we're doing a tequila and ginger.
Oh boy, okay.
Yeah, a little something different. It's a little bit more of a. Most people will do tequila and ginger. It's a little bit more of a Caribbean thing. Mm-hmm. Preferably get ginger beer. I didn't have access to that as we just discussed our the LCBO's closing for
like Saturday, right? Like you sort of ran. I was just saying to Maddie that like 8:15, I discovered I didn't have what I wanted. I'm like, oh well, I'll just get it tomorrow. I'm like, no, you won't, you asshole.
I cannot do it.
Right.
So in that case, I'm just going with a regular ginger ale today, but so not quite as spicy as I like it, but if any of the listeners want to get away for beer for a day, something nice to try. A little summery.
Yeah, okay. I got you. And I got nothing particularly new and exciting over here, but something that's always in the fridge. We've talked about it 100 times before. It's the Octopus Wants to Fight from Great Lakes Brewery. It's sort of the go-to, like if I'm not sure what I want, I'll grab 6 of those and just let them sit in the fridge or whatever, right? So that's what we went with tonight.
Nothing wrong with that. That is an all-timer.
It's a very nice beer for sure, buddy.
Top 5 beer.
We should get right into it let's start with the first half of this because the Raps tonight found out that they were losing Fred Van Vleet, and this went right to the wire. There was rumor they were still talking to him right up until 3 o'clock today, and all of a sudden he signs in Houston, and their free agency period in the NBA has been open since about 6 p.m., so this happened pretty quickly, and this is a guy, for people who aren't super familiar with this guy's path, Fred Van Vleet signs in 2016, an undrafted rookie. He's making like $560,000. And in 2020, when he gets a new contract, he's now making $21 million. And that makes him the highest paid undrafted player ever until tonight, when suddenly he signs with Houston. He's going to be making $43 million per year, shattering his previous record. Everybody's been talking about that believe in yourself, right? Bet on yourself. This is a guy who barely made it into the league. Now he's making a max deal, $43 million a year to go to Houston. What was your reaction when you saw he was bailing out on Toronto, headed to Houston? And I say bailing like it's a negative thing. I'm not trying to shit on this guy at all. For $43 million, I'll go wherever the hell you tell me to go, right? Like, good for this guy. guy.
I'd go anywhere but the Ottawa Senators, quite frankly.
Fair enough, man. That's not like they have $43 million to offer you anyway,
true.
so don't worry about it.
They don't have $43 million debit at the bank at this point, right?
Right. Yeah.
And neither is Arizona, I guess. But that's a talk for a different day.
Sure.
It's a bittersweet one for me. I was a big Freddie guy. I met Fred at a charity event in his rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was in November, so he had just gotten called up. I don't even know if he had seen playing time, outside of some garbage minutes at that point. Really, nobody knew who he was even at the event because there was DeMar and there was Kyle and a lot more popular players.
Sure, bigger names.
And, Fred Van Vleet was just walking through the event and got a chance to meet him and get a picture with him right from the get-go. I think he was surprised I even knew who he was, to be honest with you. That's why I never quite believe when they say he's 6 feet tall, because he's not that much taller than me in the photo we've taken. And as you know, I'm more of a pint-sized fella than I am
true.
A tall boy.
A point guard to his point guard.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, for that little bit of a personal reason, and just you love the story, right? That's the underdog story, the guy who wasn't supposed to be there, who just played so well that made you love him. And he had that, much like Kyle Lowry, right? Had that little bit of a bulldog mentality that the city of Toronto always is going to love and want more of, right? We always love our third liners, right? We love those guys. We love guys who, we feel like they're working
Or John
hard.
McDonald's, right? We got those guys.
Oh, God.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, exactly, right? We love that guy. And the hustle and the heart and that sort of stuff. And we don't win an NBA championship without him.
Right.
Right. I think that's not even fair to say, but it's true. I mean, that was his coming out party where he was better. He just kind of became a different guy. He rose to the occasion. And, when Kyle Lowry leaves, it really does become his team a little bit. And we still had some success. I was what do I say? I was hoping he was going to leave, though, because it looked crazy that in the market he was going to get at least $35 million.
And there were people last year, apparently in the offseason, you'd know this better than I would, that we're talking about Toronto having offered him in last year's offseason $25 million and him turning it down. And a lot of people saying, I can't believe that guy turned that down. He'll never get that. And then all of a sudden we arrive this year and people are talking about 35 and he ends up at 43, right? Like,
well, this is why they pay their representation so much, because the thing about this year is there's not a lot of free agents, right?
No.
There's not a lot of high quality free agents. And I know somebody's out there thinking, well, what about Kyrie? And yeah, I'm sorry, I'd rather have Fred Van Vleet than Kyrie Irving because of what Kyrie's past has been.
Kyrie
he's burned.
Demolished his team, talks like he's going to walk, and then comes back for more. I can't. He signed a huge deal tonight. Was it? He not in the 40? Where was he at? $45 million or something?
Yeah. He back with Dallas, and So yeah,
busy night in Texas.
I know Kyrie has the God handles, and all the players love him because he's a true baller or whatever they want to say. But you look at what happened and how he left Cleveland, how he left Boston, what happened in Brooklyn. It's a track record at some point. No matter how good you are at basketball, you have to decide, is this the type of guy you want? So I really don't think a lot of teams should have been evaluating Fred that much different than a guy like Kyrie. I think they probably both got too much money. But hey, somebody's got to get paid, I guess, in the NBA. And if you're the best couple free agents in this class, the best guys in that given class are always going to be paid.
Sure.
And I think there were a lot of teams, like, Dallas is a strange case because they don't have a lot of salary cap, so they almost had to sign Kyrie.
Yeah.
Or sign him back. You got a team like Houston that needed to get into the cap. They didn't have enough money, right?
Well, so what does this mean for Houston? Like, what do they think they are now? And like, was this just about the money for Van Vleet?
I mean, I think we'd be silly to say it's not.
Sure, it's a lot of money.
That's
right.
A lot of money. I think it's a different position. You've got a very young team with some very talented players, but it's a team that's lacked any bit of leadership at all on that team. And they've been a fun team to watch if you catch them for a half here or there on TV. Because they've, like I said, they've got these very young athletic players, but they don't have guys who are going to be the adult in the room. They don't have the guy who's going to teach them how to win.
So here's a guy now in Van Vleet who's come up the hard way, battled for everything he's gotten. He's a champion. He's got a few years under his belt. Maybe he can come in and kind of help to reel that in a little. Is that sort of the play here?
I think so. I think they're kind of giving him the reins of this team in a way of, maybe it's not your team, but it's, hey, you're going to point guard this team, right? You're going to lead this team. The ball is going to be in your hand at every possession. We're going to teach these guys how to win. And with a guy like you there, we're going to, all these basketball teams, it's a problem, right? When you're drafting 19-year-olds and, you've got all these guys under that first contract, you need to have that, you need a guy there to teach them how to win, right? And this has become a story a little bit with Philadelphia at the moment. With when Doc got fired, their coach, he's come out like almost immediately and said, man, the biggest problem with that organization was they just accept the process that became famous, obviously, right? They don't worry so much about, we're going to miss a game. We're not going to play through pain. It's okay. There's next year. He said that's just an ingrained mentality. And I think that is true, right? Like you don't want to teach young players that losing 60 games a year is okay.
Well, and for people who maybe only follow the NBA a little more casually, you're seeing this right now in Chicago, where the Blackhawks just drafted Connor Bedard, and immediately they've gone out and they've gotten Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno and Corey Perry. And I mean, say what you want about Corey Perry, but you're getting veteran guys who are going to be around and kind of teach this guy how to be a pro, as opposed to just this bare bones thing they did last year, which they didn't care, right? They just wanted to lose. They're going to lose a lot this year, but they want this guy to have some adults in the room, as you put it a few minutes ago.
And Matt, I think you actually hit it. You said it really well there. How to be a pro, right? It's not just about what you do on the court, and you can show up and you can win games from now and again. You can get on the highlight reel, you get to the All-Star game, but are you doing the other things day to day, practice to practice, between practices? What are you doing to prepare? Are you, can you be that? Can you show them this is how you be a pro? This is how you survive 3-4 contracts in the NBA by working this way, right? The talent takes you so far, but you need that dedication to really be, a winner in these pro leagues. And I think that's what this contract is for Houston, because there was a lot of talk that James Harden might go back to Houston, and everybody's making the jokes because obviously Houston also, Houston's a party city.
Sure.
So I think there's part of that organization, after they moved off of Chris Paul and Harden, and maybe there was a rusted Harden there for a little while too, that they said, maybe the organization said to themselves, we need to get more serious pros in here.
Right.
Right. We can't have guys running off to the strip club, if they don't have a game the next day or whatever it might be. Right. And again, influencing the younger players to say, hey, this is okay. This is an okay lifestyle to have, where, you've got to be committed every day, 365 days a year now, to be a pro in these leagues. So I think that's a big part of it. And it's the NBA. So, for Freddie, even if, Houston maxes out as a 9 seed, a 10 seed over the next 2 years, being in Houston is going to get him on TV a lot more.
Sure.
And you can guarantee in that third year he's going to be able to be moved to a contender at any point, right? So, which is becoming a little bit of a thing in the NBA right now, where a lot of people feel that's why a lot of guys just re-sign to their teams to get that, especially if they have the bird rights, they get a higher contract, and they know they can just
demand a trade later,
in a year or 2 years. Case in point, James Harden, who just re-upped with Philly and proceeded the next day to say, I am also demanding a trade.
I'm out. Yeah.
So I'm gonna take the player option because I'm gonna get that money, but now I also want to trade out of here because, again, if he had hit the free agent market, he might not have gotten as much as he was getting at this point, right? And he wants to keep those bird rights moving forward, right? To continue to max out his contract. So I think it was a good move for Houston, given who was an option.
And their development and what they're trying to accomplish with this young group, right? This is a good piece. Did they
absolutely overpay? Sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
They were also one of the worst teams for the last 3 years. So you're going to have to overpay, right? You have to pay a little bit of a loser tax.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad the Raptors didn't do it, because I don't think as we were exchanging text messages, I don't think Fred fit this team.
Well, let's move to that, Maddie. Where does this leave the Raptors, right? They were a 41-41 team last year, which is the very definition of mediocre. They lose in the play-in round. They're sort of in a weird place right now as to what are they? Are they trying to retool on the fly and get going? Are they rebuilding? They have some young pieces in place. Grady Dick obviously gets drafted here recently. People have already fallen in love with Scotty Barnes. And then you sort of have this weird, I don't want to call it leftover. That's overstating it or making it sound rougher than I want to, with Van Vleet and OG from that last round, right? That last run to the championship. And then some other pieces you've brought in, like Gary Trent. It sounds like he's getting ready to re-up. Where does this leave the Raptors? Van Vleet is out. They've already replaced him. My Twitter timeline didn't seem to be in love with the replacement. Like, where are the Raptors as we sit here to now at 11:30 on Friday night?
And how quick the NBA moves. The news breaks with Fred Van Vleet. I read one or two tweets. I flip a message to my buddy who's a big Raptor fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I can't believe he got this much. He goes, yeah, man, he got paid. And I said, so I guess the Raptors are going to go after Schroeder. And he said, it already happened.
Oh.
Like, in the time it took me to send 3 text messages,
right?
The next tweet came out already. I was like,
I guess I'm scrolling through Twitter, and it's Michael Grange of Sportsnet who kind of says, I'm hearing that the next move could be, or maybe the Raps will move to look at a guy like Schroeder. And then, within 3 minutes, he's quote tweeting himself going, hearing it's done. 2 years, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, Schroeder's already tweeting it out. I was like, wait, what happened?
Yeah.
Is it a retool on the go? I think that's what we've continued to hear from that front office, is they don't feel like they're that far away. And
Do you feel like they are?
I don't feel like they're that far away in the East.
Okay.
Do I think they're close to Denver or the Lakers? No. Do I think they're that far away in the East? I don't think it's that big of a jump, to be honest. We just saw a team in the Heat, who were also a playoff team, a play-in team, go all the way to the finals.
True, yeah.
I thought the Knicks looked pretty good this year. I don't think there's a large difference between the Raptors and the Knicks. Boston has been maybe the best talent in the East for the last 2-3 years, but they're clearly missing something in their squad in general. And Milwaukee, outside of Giannis, is really not that strong either. So I think the East is a little bit more wide open than people understand.
Giannis, so.
But they do have Giannis. Listen, it's like saying, well, they only have Wayne Gretzky. And you're like,
right.
I know.
That's the Oilers,
point,
without
right?
McDavid, but they have McDavid.
But they do. I know. It's a silly thing to say, but you know what I mean, right? Because all it is a sprained ankle, right? And then you're going through or whatever it might be, right? Or the Raptors have had a way of controlling Giannis sometimes in their defensive, output under Nick Nurse. I know obviously Nick Nurse is gone too.
Yeah.
And we're going to see a different style of play. I think we're going to see, and this maybe leads into the conversation because we get this new coach in Darko who everybody loves around the league, and everybody was super happy to see him get this position.
Mm-hmm.
He's, in the film that I've seen of him talking about basketball, he really believes in a fast-paced basketball team. He wants to see more passes. He doesn't worry about turnovers the way Nick Nurse did. We'll see how his defensive outlook is. I don't know much about, but I know offensively he wants to really move the ball. So and he wants to play fast basketball. And again, Fred Van Vleet, never been the fastest guy on the court to begin with. And as he's getting older, he's definitely, he slows the game down, which is, again, good for teams sometimes. You can get somebody to slow it down. I I think, a lot of Raptor fans, especially again after a 41-41 season, were like, I think Raptor fans just wanted a change. So you get Nick Nurse leaves, and then it's, well, I hope we trade Pascal for something. I hope we trade OG for something. But it comes down to, well, are we getting something that the team values more than those guys?
Yeah, or is it just change for the sake of change, right?
And I appreciate because, obviously in Canada, we watch a lot of GMs in hockey, and they just change for the sake of change a lot.
Yeah,
right?
On Saturday, we're going to watch a bunch of people blow their brains out over
just for no
Michael
reason.
Bunting.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. It's just going to be like, let's go get this guy because I need to do something.
Right.
And the Raptors for the last 4 or 5 years have never really done that, right? They make trades when they feel like the trade makes sense for their team, right? And if they value, there's a lot of hate, on Twitter for Masai sometimes with this, and they're like, oh, but he wants to win the trade all the time. And you're like, isn't that his fucking job?
That's sort of the point, yeah.
If he gives OG up for a first, the third overall pick, and then next year OG's what they think he was going to be all along, everybody's going to say, well, they got fleeced.
Yeah.
What an idiot GM.
So,
and that's why we're on Twitter.
Right, exactly. That's right. And it's an interesting day. People are mad at Masai right now for getting nothing for a guy like Fred Van Vleet. But on the other side of the coin, when you look back, also today, Masai Ujiri nominated for the Order of Canada. So the guy, he's brought an NBA title to Canada. He's done all kinds of philanthropical work and, great guy. Just wanted to sneak that in there, make sure we mentioned that he was put up for the Order of Canada today. What can you tell me, though, about Schroeder, the guy being brought in to replace Fred Van Vleet? As I said to you, it's obviously just anecdotal. As you've just pointed out, we're just guys on Twitter. My Twitter timeline didn't seem all that excited about Schroeder being the guy to be brought in to replace him. What can you tell me about him?
I would say Toronto Raptor Twitter is not the most intelligent part of Twitter.
Okay.
Just in general. It's a lot of people who, I'm not saying they don't watch the games, but I don't think they really understand the games a lot, right?
Sure. That was Maddie, good listener, not me. That was Maddie directing.
Directing my hate over.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of, and again, it's like Toronto Raptor Twitter is like the new Leaf fan. It's, why does my guy suck? Why I hate these guys. They fall in love with players really quickly. They hate players really quick, even quicker.
Sure.
Again, if you'll hear a lot on Twitter, and I've started to, always message, like, subtweet these people when they put this shit up. It's like, oh, well, see, they should have traded Fred Van Vleet at the deadline. You're like, when they had those deals, and you're like, well, what deals? What were those deals? Right. Nobody's ever came out. And you know how the NBA is. Everybody likes to leak things, right?
Of course, yeah.
Except for Masai and the Raptors.
Yeah.
So at some point, wouldn't another organization be like, yeah, we actually offered this, and we couldn't believe the Raptors said no. But we never actually see these deals perceptibly that everybody thinks
it would be out there if there was some slam dunk better trade, yeah.
Oh, they should have taken that trade for Pascal at the deadline? What trade? Do you know something that nobody else on the planet? Are you Adrian Wojnarowski?
Right.
Because if he doesn't, I know, user 7561 baby basketball, you don't know either, quite frankly. Neither do I. But I know I don't know.
Right.
So,
So you're saying
there's my rant on that.
Yeah,
but,
that maybe people are overreacting and that this might be okay. Tell us about this guy.
Because they don't watch enough basketball that's not Raptor basketball.
It gets late, man. He was an LA Laker. I can't stay up that late.
And I know he was on OKC before and all that stuff. But he is a guy that I always hated when the Raptors played them. Because you watch him and you're like, why are you doing, like, you watch him and you're like, you don't look like the most talented guy. He's not a great shooter, that's for sure. But you watch him and you go, at the end of the game, you're like, he was everywhere. He was everywhere. He causes havoc. He cuts the lane. He gets what is the one thing the Raptors have been awful at the last 2 years is just when you need 2 points, just getting to the bucket. Just get to the bucket, right? And it was always, maybe this is going to be a difference because we've had Fred Van Vleet with the ball in the last 2 minutes usually, and I know he hits some big shots, but he likes putting himself in that spot. And I think sometimes that impaired the Raptors, right? The Raptors were a team that there's just too many games in the last 2 minutes. It was always buckets back and forth. It's always a 2-3 point game the whole last 2 minutes. And it's tiresome. I think that's part of the reason they had such a mediocre record is it's just fatiguing for teams to continually be in that type of game over and over again. And I think a lot of that had to do with Fred Van Vleet and the style of basketball he played. With Schroeder, he's not going to put up your 25-point game. He's not going to hit 5 threes every once in a while. He's going to have a bad shooting percentage, but he's going to get to the bucket.
Yeah, the first thing you said to me when I texted you about this guy was aggressive, right? Like he's going to push the pace. He's going to get involved. He will be there. Like where the action's happening, he will be right there.
Yeah. He's one of the best in the league statistically at pick and rolls. And the Raptors love, again, thinking back to last year's Nick Nurse team.
Sure. But
you got to assume Darko's going to be running pick and rolls when you got Pascal Siakam and you've just re-signed Jakob Poeltl at $20 million a year for 4 years.
Yep.
As well. So you're going to be running pick and rolls. You want a point guard who is reliable and successful with these pick and rolls. And I think we're going to see a lot of pick and rolls this year. That's what that tells me, right? I also think we're going to see a guy who, is looking for his teammates a little bit more. So I think guys like OG and Gary Trent, who were clearly getting a little frustrated with, not getting the ball for their quarter shots. I think they're going to get their shots this year. And then we're going to see as well, it's going to open it up to Scotty to do a little bit of a point guard, a point forward style play where he's going to be taking the ball up a little bit more as well and getting a little bit more involved. So I think as a team dynamic, if you told me as of right now, we've added Greedy Dick, who I think might finally be your first Raptor jersey. Just because you might finally just buy that.
The big dick jersey on the back.
Number one. Yeah. Just the big dick one jersey.
Yeah, you know what, man? You might be onto something. I never have laid my hands on the Big Country Robinson jersey, so we may have to move over.
Might finally get you to get one here.
Well, the thing is, man, as you and I have joked about for 100 years on this podcast, always thought I needed to get myself a Big Country Robinson jersey. Yeah. And to me, that would be believable. But nobody's going to believe Matt walking around the Big Dick Robinson. Like, that's not going to fly. Nobody's buying that, right? So it is what it is, man.
Well, you're going to have to own it, right? Like, you got to walk around the room.
Yeah, with a bit of a strut, right?
Like maybe a little wide
leg. You have to sell it a little bit. Yeah, no, for sure.
Hey, when did Matt become bow-legged?
Right.
You really got to get into it. But just to finish that thought, what's changed, right?
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. With this team now. We've added
Grady Dick. Yeah. We've added Grady Dick. And if you sub out Schroeder for Van Vleet, you're going to say, well, where are those points coming from? And I would say to you, well, listen, Poeltl, when we got him back, almost immediately started averaging 15, 16 points a game again.
Yeah.
He was amazing. I think, Pascal is still going to get his. I think they're going to be looking for Gary, obviously, to take a step forward, and they're going to be looking for OG to take a little offensive step forward. And I know
there seemed to be some surprise tonight, Matty, that they were locking up Gary Trent Jr. Was it like that? There might have been some talk that he was headed out the door. Were you hearing that? Are you surprised they're locking him up too?
I felt like that was a little bit more coming from the frustration that he showed towards the end of last year.
Right.
There was definitely seemed to be some frustration with Gary Trent and OG. If you looked at their faces, sometimes when Van Vleet would just walk up the floor and jack a three, I think they were getting a little frustrated with it. And unfortunately, Nick Nurse wanted that guy, right? He likes having that veteran that he knows, hey, at least I know what I'm getting from you.
Sure.
So he wasn't like he was ever going to, bench him.
No.
Quite frankly, right? So I think they were a little stuck there, and I think a lot of that frustration came from that. And again, I love Freddie. I just don't think that team and him were the right fit for the way they had built the rest of that roster. And where those other guys are in their career and, what they're looking for, as far as their offensive output. I mean, was it last year or the year before? There was a lot of talk of, OG's been unhappy.
Yeah.
Is he going to, is he going to sign his extension?
Oh,
a lot of that
true.
came down to he wanted more looks offensively. He wanted to be more involved offensively. So, they're basketball players. They want the ball, and I think subbing, Schroeder out for, or shoving Schroeder in for
Van Vleet
for Freddie. I don't know if this is a dramatically worse team.
I was just going to ask you, man. That's my next question. Like, to me, and you know me, man, I'm doing my best, but I'm swimming a little into my waters here. But to me, I would have a very hard time saying, after tonight, we have no idea what else might go on throughout free agency, but I would have a hard time saying tonight that they're a better team. But I need you to tell me, are they for sure a worse team?
I don't think they're a for sure worse team.
Okay.
And given the other things that are happening around the East right now, I don't know if they're I don't know if they're any worse than the 9th place team that they were last year, quite frankly.
And that's frustrating enough for fans too, right? Because you'd like to hear, no, now we're a 5th place team or something.
Yes.
Treading water is rough on a fan base, right? Like, you want to feel like you're going somewhere.
I think this year is going to be about development, though, right? And I think they brought in a coach who is big on development.
That's his deal, right?
And they're looking at. I don't think it's not like it's not like OG is that old or Gary Trent's that old that they're going to not develop anymore. But you're really looking obviously at Scotty and Grady Dick as obviously your two pieces that to continue to develop.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably looking for OG and Gary Trent to take small steps forward. And you know what you've got with Pirtle and with Pascal.
Right.
So, are they a 9th place? Are they going to be somewhere in the 7 to 10 range? Yes. Right. And development from there comes from the two young guys.
Yeah.
Right.
How far can they push you?
And again, it's basketball. People become available. You want the most pieces and good pieces to be able to move for those guys when they become available. And that's what everybody seems to forget. It's like, yeah, we have a bunch of guys who are kind of like the 3rd and 4th guys on their team, on a championship team at the moment, right? Maybe outside of, let's say, Pascal, who would be a number 2 potentially on a championship team. And that's no disrespect to Scotty. I just don't think he's above that.
Certainly not yet. No, yeah.
And I think you look at it and you go, but if somebody became available, Katie for the 10th time in his career, or, whoever it might be, and you go, okay, well, we actually have the pieces to move and still keep the other guys that are good. That's what you want, right? That's
sure.
It's part of building a basketball team. And I don't think anybody is expecting the Raptors to compete unless they have a true number 1 guy. And maybe Scotty can develop into that. Maybe it's, again, they finish 10th next year and they get another chance at the lottery. Who knows how that shakes out? But I think from a development standpoint, this is a better place for the Raptors. Last year was more frustrating to me because they weren't built to develop. They were built to actually...
Yeah, it seemed like last year they didn't really know what they wanted to be.
Yeah, it felt... That was frustrating to me because there was games you watched them and you're like, oh, this is a top 5 team. And then there's games you're like, this is a bottom 5 team. And they Jekyll and Hyde through...
Yeah.
There was a point there where they lost number of games in a row and it just seemed like they didn't know what they were doing. And Scotty took a step back in development for a little bit in the season, and he popped back up towards the end of the season. But there was it just seemed like they were a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde team, and a lot of highs, a lot of lows. And, it's a long season. You got to kind of tread water sometimes. And I think this will be a fun team to watch, but Raptor fans are going to have to understand that it's not about the wins this year. And again, I don't think it's like they're going to win 20 wins.
Right.
It's not going to be the sky's not falling.
No, you may be looking at another 41-41 kind of team.
And you're looking for another guy that you can pick up, in a trade. Because again, there's nobody in free agency this year.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Like if Raptor fans are thinking, okay, well, they want to run it back and add something. It's like there's nobody to add.
No.
There's no big star.
No, there's no franchise turning. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's nobody. And if there was, they're not looking at the Raptors right now.
Right. That's right.
The Raptors have to reposition themselves to be in a point where you can go after that Kawhi, or you can take a chance on that star.
Mm-hmm.
But they're, again, it's going to come down to development. I think it's going to be a more exciting year because if you just settle into going, how are we doing? How are these guys progressing? Are they picking up the new playbook? Are they more exciting to watch? Do they stop blowing all these fourth quarter leads like they had a tendency to do last season? Then it's going to be a way more fun season for Raptor fans, and hopefully freaking Raptors Twitter gets off everybody's case. But and honestly, I think Schroeder's a guy who's been traded. He's been moved to a lot of different teams over his career. Listen, he won a championship with the Lakers and LeBron. He can play, right? Like, this is a guy who can play. He's just always, the fifth guy. And that's okay. Like, you still need that guy.
You got to have one of those guys, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I think the Raptor fan base is going to like him a lot more than they feel like they are right now, because he's, again, not the poster boy for anything, quite frankly, right? Outside of that stripe of blonde in his hair, probably.
So let me ask you one more thing here, Matty. And I'm sort of springing this on you out of nowhere, but it just sort of caught my attention earlier in the week. And with Nick Nurse leaving Toronto, it probably wasn't surprising that eventually, and maybe it came sooner than I thought it would, he would step away from his duties coaching the Canadian national team. And they've found a replacement, and that's all fine. But one of the things, I can't even remember now who I saw tweeted it, was that a couple of guys who maybe hadn't had a lot of contact with the national team were now ready to re-engage. And I sort of had it in my head that Nick Nurse was a pretty popular coach, a guy that was well regarded and, was a bit of a coup to have that guy running the Canadian national team. Did you hear the same things? Were there rumblings that you had heard that maybe there was a couple of guys that weren't in love with Nick Nurse running the team?
That was I think I saw the same tweet you did, and I can't remember who tweeted it. Am I surprised? I feel like Nick Nurse was a hard coach.
Sure.
And listen, let alone the track record in the NBA. This guy's got a track record everywhere he went. Mm-hmm. And he's going to have a good record. As long as everybody stays on Philadelphia, he'll probably do okay there as well.
Sure, yeah.
But I have a feeling, he's the type of coach who probably has a shelf life on a team. And there was, from a lot of the younger guys, the NBA is pretty tight-knit. Like, maybe there's some guys who don't like that coaching style.
Do you think there's something, the only thing, Matty, and again, you know this shit better than I do, we both know that, but do you think there's anything to the fact that you're asking these guys to give up parts of their off-season, and when they show up, at that point, you're trying to win, and you got to have standards, but I'm not really looking for the hard ass, right? I'm not looking for Tortorella when I show up in the summer. I'm looking for a guy who's going to work with me, help me get the best out of it, and we'll try and do our best for Canada. But I'm maybe not looking for the guy really grinding on defense and really staying on me as part of my off season. Yeah.
I think that's it, man. I think you look at where Team USA had success, especially with a guy like Pop. And, Pop, I think we think of him as, the hard ass in the media.
Mm-hmm.
And he's definitely X's and O's, but you don't really see him getting on too many guys too hard in a game.
Right.
Right. He does seem to kind of let his guys play their game. Maybe it's just more recent, recency bias. In that is, watching him on the sidelines. But Nick Nurse is on every play.
Yeah.
Right. He is up. He is clapping at the defense. He's clapping at the refs. Yeah, maybe, these younger
showing
guys
up in August. I'm here trying to help my country in Victoria.
Right?
It's not, get off my ass, right?
Canadian basketball players, let's be honest, they're not necessarily known as the toughest guys, right?
Yeah.
And they're all kind of all the same age range. And, and I don't think they're necessarily as tight as we'd like to think all the Canadian basketball players are. I think Jamal Murray's come out and publicly said that. That just because we're Canadian doesn't mean we're all buddies type of thing. And, Dylan Brooks is obviously not a big fan. He's a little bit of a villain in the league. I'm not sure how much everybody loves him. But there was rumblings that he might be going to Houston as well. Listen, I that's probably something about it, man. And because we have the talent now to compete.
Yeah.
But what we don't have is a depth of talent, right? It's a little akin to those years where the USA Hockey has had really great teams.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going, wow, 1 through 9, they're great.
Yeah.
But then you look at the fourth line, and it's like
the depth
Canada's
drops
rolling
way
out, like,
off. Yeah.
We're
Thornton,
rolling out like
Heatley, and
Rick Nash, and Joe Thornton, and you're like, oh,
right.
Yeah, that's where it is, right? Where, Canada could probably some years, not every year, but some years put up two very good teams, competitive teams, and these other countries are, they're 6 deep, they're 90. That's Canada basketball.
When you move into basketball, we are Germany or in hockey, right? Like where you have some guys, but the depth.
You don't have enough
there.
guys,
right?
And if you have 2 or 3 guys who don't like playing for that coach or don't want to play for that coach, or it doesn't work with their off season, or they don't have contracts yet, it seriously affects what goes on that team. So, listen. I also think Canada basketball, and hate to rain on everybody's parade. I don't think we're going to be as competitive as is it next year's Olympics or 2 years. I can't remember now, but it's.
I think there's a qualifier this year, and then I think a summer games next year. Yeah,
there's a very interesting qualifying tournament that's I can't remember what it is, whether it's the World Cup,
it's like a World
or
Cup or something. Yeah,
and it's happening either in the Philippines or Malaysia.
Yep.
And Canada is in what they're calling the group of death, of course.
Oh, super!
Because we can't just get one easy year in this frickin' sport as we're trying to develop. We are very lacking. We have a lot of guards. We've got a lot of wings. We don't have a lot of centers, right? You're looking at Powell, and you're looking at in Dallas, and you're looking at Chris Boucher, Kelly Olynyk, guys who are basketball players for sure, pros for sure. Are they? What are we going to do on that stage? I don't know with those guys.
It's interesting, right? When you talk about this qualifier, I'm with you. I believe it's in the Philippines. And if you're trying to get guys signed up to take a chunk of their summer, I was sort of ripping on the idea of having to go to Victoria last year. That ain't nothing compared to having to convince these guys to go to the Philippines towards the end of their off season, right? It's a battle. And so maybe that was part of the deal with Nick Nurse is, you know what? It's travel, it's extra games, it's extra commitment, and this guy's going to grind me. And so, Well,
it might be why Nick Nurse quit as well, right?
Sure.
He's joining a new team. He's got to meet with new players. He's got to
get ready for a first camp with a new squad.
Right? A little different than just rolling into...
But I don't care about that. I care where it leaves Team Canada. So,
that's it.
I wish Nick Nurse well, but I really only care about what it means for Team Canada.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
Screw that guy.
It's been a busy night, man, in the NBA. Busy night for the Raptors, and there's been some turnover. No doubt there will be some more. It's Friday night, Canada long weekend, and Maddie, this is what it's like. You're coming up right behind me, man. As you hit 40, you're sitting at home on a Friday night, able to do a podcast on a moment's notice with fireworks happening out my window. Everyone else out enjoying the night, but you and me, man, at home on the couch. That's the way it goes now.
Enjoying our night the way we want to.
Exactly, buddy. Yeah. So, Maddie, I think we'll wind this one down here. Thanks for doing it. I know you'll be all ears on Saturday, watching to see where all the NHL's best third liners and third pair defenders sign.
Talk about two drafts that just happened where we have potentially, phenoms basically, right? Potential phenoms who just got drafted.
Yeah.
And we're following it up with two of the weakest
free agent classes
in a decade.
Yeah.
Right. But
I gotta know, man. Where's Matt Duchene gonna go? I gotta find out.
Yeah, the last time I cared about Matt Duchene,
the World Junior team in 2009.
Well, I was gonna at least give him when he left to go to Ottawa.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I was at least when he said I want to play playoff hockey and proceeded to not play playoff hockey with Ottawa.
With the Senators, yeah. That was basically his trade to Ottawa was basically the beginning of the death spiral of the Senators. So
yeah, it was, and then Colorado really peaked at that point.
Yeah,
that's when their come up happened. So
that's rough.
Fucking Matt Duchene,
and now Nashville buying him out. So tough stretch for Matt Duchene. I will wind this one down here, Matty. Thanks for doing it, buddy.
No problem, man. Good to talk.
All right, we'll talk to the rest of you all on Monday morning. Rob will be back in here. I think Lever Sage will be in here on the podcast later that week. He'll talk publicly for the first time.
Sorry. How did we do this? I hope we didn't lose anybody on that close.
We're still here.
People will hear this after it's probably happened. Maybe not. But I got to know. I have to know.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you got in the Money in the Bank?
Oh, God, I don't even know who's in the match. Honestly, I've hardly watched lately. So this will be Saturday afternoon, Money in the Bank, WWE.
We've got London time. We're on London time, so 3 p.m.
Okay. LA Knight, is he in the match? I like that guy.
He is in the match.
I like that guy. So I'll say LA Knight and hope for the best because I have no idea who the hell else is even in it.
Okay, well, I am a person of the people. I'm a people of the person.
Man of the people.
How to say that? Man.
Yeah,
tequila's going down.
It's getting late. Yeah.
I gotta say, I want to desperately say LA Knight because I've been big on this guy since he got over to NXT.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like that is the reason they are not going to let him win the Money in the Bank. Because if he wins it, great. If he doesn't win it, when they show up the next week in New York, he is going to have the biggest groundswell of support from anybody. He is going. I think losing that match or having him be robbed is going to make him a bigger star in the long run. And I think they give it to Damian Priest.
Okay.
And
I'll take your word for that. Yeah, I can see it.
Because I'm a feminist, I know there's a Woman in the Bank match as well. And unlike you.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, as much as I want to say, it's going to be Trish Stratus.
Love me some Trish.
I think we're going to get... I think we're going to get Becky. I think Becky's getting the briefcase.
That would make sense, right? She's the big star there, and
she's the big star. And I think they gotta pump the women's division up there. So
Cody versus Dom. That's the one I'm looking forward to. Dominic Mysterio is such a douchebag character. I love. Like he's got heat, right? Everybody boos him every time he comes out, right? So
he's the best villain.
Yeah,
in
hilarious
pro wrestling in forever.
Yeah,
and
so
then
I'll watch that.
We've got the Civil War to probably finish it off. So
the Usos versus Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. Cody, I already mentioned Cody. Seth Rollins is defending that new shiny belt he's got.
I totally even forgot about that match. Yeah.
So I'll flip it on and off, right? I'll be watching some Blue Jays. I'll be watching some CFL. I'll be watching some free agency, and we'll have to check in on some WWE Money in the Bank, man. So
and don't forget my Argos going for 3-0 on Monday.
That's right, man.
Just FYI.
Ottawa Red Blacks just won a home game. Can you believe it?
Chad Kelly's team.
Yeah. All right. We'll wind this one down here. That is Tall Can Audio for your Canada Day. Hope you're all enjoying it. Hope you're all celebrating. No doubt while you're listening to this, Maddie and I are still on our couches, not doing much of anything. We'll catch you all on Monday morning.
That's it. I cannot work under these conditions. If anybody wants me, I'll be downstairs at McDougal's. Call the weekend guy. I don't care.